was just 12 years old when her family moved into the old house on the outskirts of town. It was a big, old-fashioned house with a long history. The previous owners had lived there for generations, and it was rumored that the house was haunted. Lena's parents didn't believe in ghosts, but Lena wasn't so sure. But Lena knew that it was more than that. She started to research the history of the house and discovered that it had a dark past. There had been rumors of a murder in the house many years ago, and some people believed that the victim's spirit still haunted the place. This time, the exorcism seemed to be working. Lena's body was taken over by violent convulsions, and her family watched in horror as she screamed and thrashed about. But the exorcist remained focused and determined, and he continued the ritual until finally the demon was banished from Lena's body. As a last resort, they turned to a well-known exorcist who had a reputation for dealing with the most challenging cases. The exorcist arrived at their home and began to perform the ritual, reciting prayers and chants to drive out the demon. The priest was sympathetic to their plight and listened to their story with concern. He believed that Lena was indeed possessed by a malevolent spirit, and he agreed to perform an exorcism to try and banish the entity. The first few weeks in the new house were uneventful. Lena spent her days exploring the big garden, playing with her little brother, and helping her mother unpack. But then, one night, Lena heard strange noises coming from her room. At first, she thought it was just the wind, but then she heard a voice whispering her name. They decided to seek help from experts in paranormal activity, hoping that they would be able to offer some guidance and advice. The experts arrived at their home and examined Lena, trying to determine what kind of entity had possessed her. Lena, the voice said. Lena was convinced that there was something wrong with the house. She tried to tell her parents, but they brushed off her concerns, telling her that it was just an old house settling. Her parents tried to talk to her, but Lena seemed like a completely different person. She would look at them with an intense, almost hostile gaze, and they could tell that something was seriously wrong. The exorcism was a long and arduous process, and Lena's family watched in horror as she writhed and contorted in pain. They could hear strange voices coming from her, and her body seemed to be taken over by a force they could not understand. As the days went by, Lena's fear and anxiety grew. She was sure that something was trying to communicate with her, and she didn't know what to do. She started to avoid certain parts of the house and tried to stay close to her family at all times. But the strange occurrences continued, and Lena knew that she couldn't ignore them any longer. She decided to confront whatever was haunting her and find a way to put an end to it. She knew that it wouldn't be easy, but she was determined to uncover the truth and put the spirits to rest. Lena's fear and anxiety only grew as the days went by. She started to feel like something was following her, and she could sense a malevolent presence in the house. One night, she woke up to find herself standing at the foot of her bed, staring at herself in the mirror. She didn't remember getting up, and she couldn't explain why she was there. The priest arrived at their home and began the exorcism ceremony. He recited prayers and chants, hoping to drive the demon out of Lena's body. But as the ceremony went on, Lena's behavior only became more erratic. She started to scream and thrash about, and her family could see that she was in pain. The exorcism went on for hours, but the demon seemed to be too powerful for the priest to banish. Lena's family began to lose hope, and they didn't know what to do. They were running out of options and time. They knew that they had to act fast and find a way to save Lena before it was too late. Lena's behavior started to change, and her family started to notice. She became withdrawn, and her mood swings were becoming more frequent and extreme. Lena would sometimes lash out at her family, saying things she didn't mean and behaving in ways that were completely out of character. But the strange occurrences didn't stop there. Over the next few days, Lena began to see shadows moving in the corners of her eyes. Sometimes she heard strange noises coming from empty rooms, and the air in the house would feel cold and heavy. Lena's little brother started to complain about the feeling of being watched, and her parents seemed to be on edge all the time. Her parents started to suspect that Lena might be possessed by a demon or spirit. They were afraid for their daughter's safety and didn't know where to turn. They decided to seek help from their local priest, hoping that he could offer some guidance and advice. Lena sat up in bed, her heart racing. She looked around the room, but she couldn't see anything out of the ordinary. She tried to shake off the feeling of unease that was creeping over her and told herself that it was just her imagination. Despite their efforts, the exorcism did not seem to work. Lena's behavior only became more erratic, and her family became increasingly desperate for a solution. They turned to experts in paranormal activity, hoping to find a way to save their daughter and rid their home of the malevolent presence. Lena's family was overjoyed, and they could see that their daughter was finally at peace. They thanked the exorcist for his help and vowed never to forget the terror that they had endured. Lena slowly began to recover, and her behavior returned to normal. Although they had been through a terrifying experience, Lena's family knew that they had come out of it stronger and more united than ever before. They knew that they had faced their fears and overcome them, and they were grateful for the love and support that had brought them through the darkest of times. As the days went by, Lena's condition only worsened, and her family was afraid that they might lose her. They knew that they had to act fast and find a way to banish the demon before it was too late. Lena's family turned to the local priest, hoping that he could perform an exorcism and rid their daughter of the malevolent presence that had taken over her body. They were desperate for a solution, and willing to do whatever it took to save their daughter. One day, Lena's mother went into her room to check on her, and she found Lena standing in the corner, facing the wall. Her mother tried to get her attention, but Lena didn't respond. She just stood there, motionless and unresponsive. The priest continued to perform the exorcism, but it didn't seem to be working. Lena's body was taken over by an unseen force, and she seemed to be getting weaker by the minute. Her family watched in horror as she writhed and contorted, and they could hear strange voices coming from her. They conducted a series of tests and rituals, hoping to find a way to break the demon's hold on Lena. But nothing seemed to work. Lena's behavior continued to be erratic, and her family became increasingly desperate for a solution.